like if I'm working on a record, I'm like, would you listen to this? Like the goal of this is like to cross over, not like for, sort of people within genre. Would you listen to this? Like, is this, yeah, you know what? It could, so it's nice to have that kind of objectivity against each other.
He and some of his collaborator partners will laugh at me because he works in a spare bedroom in our house, and then I sort of am we share a wall, and I'll start humming some of the the melodies of the songs that they're producing, and either he or Christoph will say, "Oh, it's a hit."
We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. B1 Bank knows that entrepreneurs like you are always thinking one step ahead. So you need banking solutions that can keep up. It begins with lending. Does your business need working capital or financing for new equipment? How about a real estate or a construction loan? Good news, the B1 lending team is ready to learn your goals and help you find the best lending option available. Now let's talk about uncomplicating your daily cash flow. B1 offers a full array of treasury management services that let you collect funds faster, pay funds more efficiently, and access your information with powerful online tools. Most importantly, B1 understands the value of working with local nonprofits to build a stronger community. They believe in giving back through hands-on involvement with their B1 Community Outreach Program because it's simply the right thing to do. B1 Bank. Be uncomplicated. To learn more, visit b1bank.com. Equal housing lender, member FDIC. Hello, I'm Andrew McClendon, your host of the Next Entrepreneur Podcast. We're here today in the Propel Production Podcast Studio in Baton Rouge, and we have our guests, Kate Grace Bauer, Rouchell, and John Michael Rouchell. Guys, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, man. So y'all are a married couple, both artists. From New Orleans and living there now, right?
That is true, yes.
I've done a little research for you, so I've seen you got a beautiful daughter.
We do.
So congrats on a beautiful family. It was fun doing the research on you guys. And what I kind of realized is that the two of you, the way that you communicate and what you do, like if you were to personify New Orleans, like you guys would be it.
Wow.
Thanks.
And so
that's a real high compliment.
Yeah. So I have family in New Orleans, a lot of family there.
Yeah.
Home's in Austin for us now, but we're been kicking the idea about getting a place in New Orleans and to help our kids and their kids now kind of connect with the rest of the family. And so we spend a lot of time walking around and different parts of the city and seeing where we might want to find a place. And it's just such a unique, cool place.
Yeah.
And, so when I saw that, when I was doing the research, I was like, man, these guys are New Orleans, just
it's kind of the northernmost Caribbean city. You know what I mean? More than America in a weird way,
So what part of the city did y'all grow up?
I grew up uptown. I grew up about 7 blocks away from where we actually live now, which is not what I thought my trajectory was going to be. But it is, and I'm happy about it. So 13th Ward.
Yeah, I grew up in Old Metairie, sort of like a stone's throw from Orleans Parish proper, right, like Metairie Road and the train tracks area.
So y'all did the Catholic school thing, right? Like myself, I was at Catholic all-boys school. Right down the street was all-girls school.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing of like, we both, we ended up being sort of like the classic Sacred Heart girl, Jesuit boy thing, which is like, once again, neither of us planned for that to be the case. We tried to rebel against it, but the vortex pulled us back, I guess.
Yeah.
So what was childhood like for you guys?
So I'm the baby of 4. My closest sibling is 6 years. So I had the luxury of sort of being in a big family, but also kind of being an only child. So childhood for me was, our house was very busy, lots going on, super rambunctious. There was always somebody doing something, or someone running away, or someone, something happening. So that was my childhood. And then, sort of my high school years were where I got to sort of spend more one-on-one time with my parents. And I had that luxury of sort of the luxury and the curse of being an only child, but also then having a lot, like all of the pressure and attention was on me.
Yeah,
so
I know exactly what you're talking about. My youngest daughter is 9 years younger than middle girl.
Yes.
And so she had that exact same. But I mean, she was really like an only child.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking
9
about.
years is
It's a cool
gap.
thing though.
It is because I love my siblings. I'm very close to, we have a group chat that we're all, talking on several times a week. And so I'm very close. My brother still lives in New Orleans, and then my two sisters live in Los Angeles and New York. And so we're sort of all spread out now, but we all, we call each other the clumps because we literally like clump together. We can't help but just move in a large group. Like that's
I think too, your upbringing being the daughter of two entrepreneurs, to the podcast point. I think that was you've always imparted that on me.
Absolutely.
As an experience.
Yeah.
So, John Michael, how about your?
I was an only child. I grew up the son of like a tax attorney and the chief of internal audit of Entergy. So not exactly fertile ground for a creative an artist and musician. But, when I was 10, I thought I was going to be a professional baseball player because, that's what 10-year-olds do. But everybody grew and I kind of didn't. And so my father was like, how about you do something that it doesn't matter how tall or how big you are? And he gave me a guitar and it was over. And then I just became obsessed with music and creativity and the arts and all that kind of stuff. And
that's so cool.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you about your first guitar, but Dad got it.
Yeah, it was like kind of like, imagine like a Les Paul, but like shrunken down for a kid. It was a brand called Lotus, I think, but it had like two actual humbucker pickups. So like it sounded like full tilt.
So you didn't start with acoustic?
No, I know.
Has it now, right?
No.
She doesn't have that one?
Yeah, we do. It's in our
does,
house.
yeah.
Yeah. No, it's still, that Lotus is in our house. I didn't start on acoustic.
That's crazy.
Which, in ways, there was things that I skipped, right? Like there was sort of fundamental things that I skipped, but by starting with electric, it kind of got a quick response of like, oh, listen how loud this is. And it kind of created this like rebellion in me, which was like really fun. And it kind of gave it a spirit, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. So, Kate, you went out of state for college?
I did. I went to California. I graduated from Cal State Fullerton. Yeah, at the time, I went to school for theater. And so at the time, Cal State Fullerton had the best theater program on the West Coast. It might still. I'm not sure, but it was wonderful. It was a great experience. I juried into the program, and by the end of it, I was Perdita in The Winter's Tale for my final performance, Shakespeare's The Winter's Tale, which is it's a much more unknown of one of his plays, but
this production was sick. It like beautiful. Rained in the middle.
It rained on the
stage. Super rad.
Yeah.
I've seen video of it. It's sick.
The set designer was this Asian American woman who was just unbelievably talented, and it was very minimalistic, the set design, but it checked all the boxes, and it was just very, very cool. It was a modern take on that.
And then you stayed out there for a while?
I tried to move home. I graduated in 2005.
Didn't the clump move out there with you?
So we had a clump contingency out there, right? So, at the time, I guess my sister and Leah and my brother Mac were in New Orleans. My sister Allie was out there. Leah had just had her only child. And then, so I graduated in 2005, and I moved home in like June, I think, of 2005. All of my like dozen or so boxes arrived, maybe like August 1st. And then we all know what happens the end of August of that year. And so, That was Katrina. And so we stayed throughout the storm. My parents had a condo. My dad built this condominium on St. Charles Avenue. And so we had a penthouse in the condo. And so we were fine in the sense that we were high and everyone was safe. We didn't have power. And by the third day, and then also our neighbor at the time was the president of Bell South. So we had access to, by proxy, we had access to the governor, to the mayor. Like, we knew what was going on in the city, but we still didn't have water. So by the third day, when it was we hadn't had power, and then we just were running out of water, and then, the city was literally just shutting down. And they were like, you got to get out. We all just need to leave. So we just got in our car with my mom, my sister, her daughter Grace Rose, my cat at the time, and Grace Rose's fish. And we just got on I-10 and went west because my sister Allie, my oldest sister, had a baby 4 months before that. So we were like, let's just go hang out with Allie. Very similar to beginning of the pandemic, right? It's we're just going to stay home for 2 weeks, right? We literally were just we're just going to go out to LA for a week or two, and then we'll come back to New Orleans, not knowing that the entire city had been completely leveled and wouldn't function for many years thereafter, or months at least.
So you stayed out at LA?
So I just stayed out in LA for another 4 or 5 years.
And then what did you do out there?
I did all the stuff that you do in your mid-20s. Okay. I nannied, I bartended, I was a waitress. My sister started a clothing. She had a clothing line and a store, and so I did the marketing for her. I created their website and their sort of online. It was the sort of the very beginning phases of Facebook rather, and so I did the Facebook page for us and sort of started exploring all of social media and what that landscape looked like, and sort of just became really knowledgeable on all these new digital marketing avenues and just immersed myself in that entire culture. I read something where I think you said something about the life lessons learned as a waitress kind of thing. Yeah, it's important about communicating and just working in the service industry. Yeah. Being on the other side of the cash register is very important, I feel like. I think that your entire life you're going to be, hopefully, going out to restaurants, getting a coffee in the morning. I mean, it's just, just common decency and compassion, and I think kindness.
Now they call it customer experience, right? CX. They've given it this kind of sexy tech title. Yeah. But I mean, I think at the end of the day, so much of whatever you're doing, whether it be business, entertainment, the arts, whatever, it's just actual minus expected equals satisfaction, right?
Yeah.
That's a truism. And so I think that, to me, that's just the game. Right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
It reminds me of a story. I like to work in restaurants throughout college in the kitchen, right?
Oh.
Yeah.
And of course, there's always that tension, right, that goes in between the wait staff and the kitchen. And where's my food? And there's this one lady who was a waitress and was particularly vocal. And we were working as hard as we could, right? We could only cook so fast. And so after work that night, I said, look, tomorrow you come dressed to work in the kitchen. I'm going to come dressed to work as a waiter.
Oh,
and I think it would do us a good job to just understand what each other's job was. And she said, okay, fine. I wasn't sure she would actually show up.
Yeah.
So, but I wore some nice clothes that you obviously wouldn't wear in the kitchen. I was committed. She wasn't going to back out.
I love this.
I can't work in the kitchen. And we did it. And I really sucked at being a waiter. And she really sucked at being in the kitchen. But she never bitched again.
Yeah. It's Harper Lee, man, To Kill a Mockingbird. Until you walk around in their shoes.
Yeah.
Empathy.
You were back out at LA for a while. I wanted to talk about how you describe yourself, things that I'd read about you as being moved by beauty and color and positivity.
Yeah.
And uplifting those around you is a really important part of what you do.
Yes.
And then, of course, that's complemented by a bunch of beautiful pictures of your artwork that I've seen online. So, but you do a lot of different things. So, can you kind of tell us what your creative output looks like? What all the different kind of medium you use?
Sure. So I'm the daughter of, like JM said earlier, two entrepreneurs. My dad's a real estate developer. My mom's an interior designer. So I grew up in a world where you could kind of just go and create anything that you wanted to, and like literally and figuratively, but mostly in the sense that my mom had an entire design office and studio where I could just go into the room and make whatever I wanted. So I've always been artistic. I've just always been, I've always used my hands, painted, put together color stories. I've always wanted to redecorate rooms and design, pull out different fabrics that like feel good and work together, right? And I have just been able to sort of like really lean into that, especially more acutely in the last 2 years. With the pandemic and sort of, being forced to stay at home and find those things at home that make you happy, believe in life, realize that beauty is everywhere. You can, create beautiful spaces. And so that's really what we've done. I've done on a canvas or with clay or with beading and jewelry or using an old cardboard box that a chair came in to create a house, a random little doll, not even a dollhouse. It was a actual, small sized house for our daughter. And, create beautiful gardens with butterflies. And, I just...
All the beautiful things in life.
All of the beautiful things. And I just believe that they should surround you, all of the things. It's very like Marie Kondo, right? Like if something, you just want to be surrounded by things that constantly bring you joy, whether it's, the womb chair from Knoll, or it's our blue velvet sofa, or, paintings of butterflies and moths, or portraits of our daughter, or, a room that's entirely blue with like abstract shapes on the wall that just feels like a nice warm hug. I am in the business of sort of making everything more beautiful and creating safe spaces where, you're inspired to create and see the beauty everywhere.
So you've been pretty prolific. I mean, yeah. You stay busy doing that. And you also have done a lot of writing, right? I mean, blogs and posts and things like that.
Yes. In a past life, I had several blogs. I actually just found them on Tumblr a few weeks ago. I was like, oh my God, these all still... I figured out my old Tumblr login and was like, oh my God, wow, this is wild. But yes, when I had more time, I would write more on blogs. I feel like each sort of Instagram post is a new blog post these days. It's just a more smaller version of a mini blog.
Yeah, it's funny how all that's changed.
Yeah, I mean, I journal every day. I write letters to my daughter. I'll write him notes. I mean, yeah, there's two writers in the house.
Yeah, so there's painting, and you mentioned clay, and then you do these kind of quotes and inspirational kind of things as well.
I do. I paint those. Those are sort of like I use, I'll paint an entire painting that's maybe like a butterfly and a sunflower or whatever it is. And then I sort of like to write on top of it just to kind of like, because as much as I am a perfectionist tendencies don't necessarily always gel with when you're trying to be an artist as well. Like there's something that has to be a little funky or just a little off or something like that. At least I find that to be most intriguing when it comes to paintings.
Yeah, I mean, this piece behind you was from my mother's estate, and you wouldn't look at that and think that would be one of my mother's favorites, but she just loved it. She has several pieces from that artist, and this piece here is from a classmate. Who I just commissioned her to do a painting.
Yeah.
And
that's cool.
I do. I love the colors in this one.
That's from Gina Esser here in Baton Rouge, who is moving to the Northwest here in a few weeks. So,
oh, wow.
And then photography, do you do that as well?
I do. I mean, as much as anyone with an iPhone is a photographer, I suppose. I mean, I learned certain like little tips and tricks and angles. We have found though, I've given Coco our Fuji camera, our little Insta.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Oh my God. And she's having so much fun with it right now. And I just love watching. I think I enjoy watching her photography journey more than I would my own. Right. Yeah. So she just is, we're teaching her how to put things in focus and, look through the hole and figure out what you want to photograph. And this morning she thought she was photographing a Lego piece, and it actually ended up being like the corner of the countertop. And so she's like, it didn't come out. And I was like, well, you just...
How old is she then?
4 and a half.
4, yeah.
Yeah.
So you ended up, anyone's working for a music venue?
Yes, I did.
What did you do for that?
I was the marketing director for Republic.
Okay.
Yeah, when I first moved back to New Orleans in the summer of 2009, I was the marketing director for Republic, and which is still there on South Peters, and that is actually what brought us together. John Michael and I.
Well, we're going to pause there and cut in a commercial break here, and then we'll pick up your side of the story, John Michael,
Sure.
when we get back. One of our sponsors, MBD Maintenance, is excited to announce that after 25 years, they're rebranding their company name to Pivotal. It's the same ownership, same staff, same location. Just a new name that better represents the services that they provide their clients across the Southeast United States. Pivotal does commercial building construction and renovation. They do tenant improvement work in retail and office facilities. They do installation of dock doors in distribution centers, storm and fire damage repair, and catastrophe recovery for national disasters. The team at Pivotal is simply the best. They're experienced, they crush schedules, and they have an impeccable safety record. If Pivotal can help you with your next project, you can find them online at pivotalperforms.com. And we are back with Kate and John Michael. So, John Michael, to pick up your side of the story, you did college in New Orleans?
Yes, I went to Loyola University. They had what was then called the Music Business Program, now called Music Industry Studies. Before, when I was 18, I was on the road, and so I deferred.
Meaning
I played in bands. I was, songwriter, a guitar player, as well as when I was 15, I started playing with George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic.
Oh, come on.
And so anytime they were in sort of the Southeast in the, that area, I would kind of travel with them. And it was this, I went to Jesuit high school, so like I had the short crew cut kind of thing. And so it was this kind of gag of like this tiny little white kid that they kind of like abducted, and he plays guitar like Jimi Hendrix. It's like a totally great gag, right? And so I was doing that for a while, and then had my own projects, own bands, and I was on the road with that. Deferred college for a year, but then went to Loyola in New Orleans. Yeah, the music industry program, the music business program, and subsequently met a lot of my future collaborators there.
And so you ended up with an MBA, but that was done later?
Yeah, that was within the last year or two. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of surprised me when I read that. I didn't pick up on the timing of that initially. But I was like, wait, what is this artistic guy doing getting an MBA?
Yeah, it was, I had a lot of experience working with brands sort of on the creative side, whether it be composing music or producing films or, all in a myriad of different roles, right? And I found that whenever I was in a meeting with a brand, right? Of course, the CFO or controller in some way, shape, or form is in said meeting. They see a creative like me, and immediately they go risk, right? Right in the middle of my forehead, or expensive in the middle of my forehead. And so, a lot of my thought was okay, if I go back to get my MBA, I was in between, like I just left a gig at Swaybox. I was producing animated films with them. And did a lot of awesome things with them. They're wonderful.
That's all film and...
Yeah, they
animated
developed,
stuff?
so this couple, Arthur Mintz and Teresa Anderson, they developed this animation technology. They were based up in Shreveport, and I spent about 2 years, about a year commuting back and forth between Shreveport and New Orleans. And then they moved down to New Orleans, and I was sort of responsible for helping staff up. When I got there, it was like about 7 people. And then by the end of it, it was about 45. We had finally put a short film in the can, and we had landed them their first development deals with a myriad of things that the people at home probably are streaming right now. So I left that situation and was kind of looking for my next chapter. And so the MBA was a way. I actually met a gentleman who was the CFO of JetBlue, a guy named Mark Powers, who's a professor at Tulane. And he said, man, you should just come back and get your MBA. That way, when people see creative or producer, they won't think you're just going to blow through their budget. And I was like, actually, that's a really good point.
And I mean, advice like that for someone at that level.
Yeah, he was incredible. He was like, and so it was wonderful. So I went back, did a dual concentration in data analysis and strategy. Ended up number 1 in my class, and so it was great.
Dude, that is so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that's left brain, right brain stuff.
It's pretty weird. But I mean, music was always, though it is creative and it's all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's always been analysis, and it's always been sort of strategy and all those things, and leadership and, entrepreneurship. I mean, when I entered sort of the professional world of music, you got to keep in mind, this is, I graduated high school in 2003. So this is the height of Napster. CDs are gone, right? So like your main revenue model and your main vertical of how you're making cash goes away. So I'm in college and I'm going like, well, okay, well, what am I going to do? Right? Because like we can no longer have these things that we sell $17.99 and the cost per unit's less than $1, right? Those margins are incredible. That's gone. So how do you go about doing this? And so that was when I started this web project called My Name is John Michael. It was mynameisjohnmichael.com. I basically wrote, recorded, and released a song a week for an entire year. And the exchange was basically, you give me your email, right? And my thought was, and this was before, it was called email marketing and, things like Klaviyo and direct to consumer and all these kind of things. My thought was, if you can get 1,000 true fans to basically spend, $10 a month on you and your art in sort of like an old school medieval kind of patronage model.
I mean, you're going this alone.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the thought was like, okay, if you can get 1,000 people to pay $10 a month, subscription model now is what they would call it, right? Patreon. This is before Patreon. This is before all these things. Before Spotify. It was, this was 99-cent download era. My thought is having 1,000 true fans at $10 a month, you can make 120 grand a year. That's a real living, And so kind of figuring out ways to sort of flip business models, change who your consumer is. How do you interact with your consumer? How do you sort of give them a different experience? All these kinds of things were always what I was doing in entertainment. Yes, I was also writing songs. Yes, I was also getting on stage and performing, but constantly trying to figure out ways to make a sustainable model, right? And so hence the MBA, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So, Bob Schneider in Austin?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
I don't know him personally, but I'm aware. Yeah, of course.
So he kind of has this song club thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know how long he's done it.
Yeah.
But I think it's a song a week.
Yeah.
And he's written like 2,000 songs
Yeah.
now. And so that's what that's essentially what you were doing back then. And that's really cool. I was going to ask you about, can an artist succeed and not be entrepreneurial?
No.
I mean, you
not now.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think so.
Yeah. I mean, the days of, if there ever was a day where you could survive on talent alone, I suspect are long gone.
Yes. I mean, I think, the beauty of the internet, there's a beauty and a curse to the internet, right? The beauty of the internet is that it has completely democratized the ability to connect with people, right? At one time, the only way to record a record, I'm just speaking from a music perspective, let's just take that medium, right? At one time, you had to go to a music studio, which was owned by a record label, prohibitively expensive. You would go in, you would record, and then you would have to have distribution, right? Which would go to Tower Records and Walmart and Name Your Favorite and all these things. And that was the only way to get music out, right? Recording technology got cheaper and cheaper, which helped. In the 80s, you had sort of the indie music kind of thing where you could kind of press CDs. The CD model was able to sort of democratize things in a certain way. Now it's just digital files, right? But to your point, the dark side of that moon is now, competition is massive. So you have to think entrepreneurially. You have to think in a way that's, what is the actual value proposition that I'm bringing? Right? I think that so much of when I'm producing another artist's record, or when Kate and I are working on a brand's campaign, so much of what we spend, I think the majority of our time and brain energy is put towards what is the unique value proposition that this artist or this brand or this thing does, right? Like, let's take Harley Davidson, for example. I personally don't think Harley Davidson sells motorcycles. I think they sell freedom, right? And so, therefore, how do we create something that gives people the experience of freedom, right? And once you kind of say, okay, freedom, every decision gets easier, right? So how are we going to shoot this? Is it going to be indoors or outdoors? Well, outdoors, of course, it's freedom, right? And so I think from an entrepreneurial perspective, I think that each artist has to start thinking about, or creative, and maybe business people too, what is your unique value proposition? Because competition is extremely high. Yeah. And so how are you going to cut through the clutter?
The amount of digital content that we all digest, right? So
it's
how
insane.
do you cut through that? Even if you have this message, if it's not spot on, people aren't going to see it. I wanted to touch on a couple of your music videos that I've seen. I think one of them, Every Night of the Year, was one of your 52.
That was one of the 52 songs, yeah.
And I saw a video, I think you did an art gallery somewhere,
Yeah, it was our friend Martine Linares.
Surrounded by 1,000 candles. And great song, great video.
Thank you, man.
And I was like, man, this guy's for real.
Thanks, man.
And I was like, what am I hearing? I thought I picked up a little Dylan influence.
Sure, 150%, of course.
Yeah, so I was curious, like, what were your influences growing up?
I mean, at that time, I wrote that song.
Because you're in Funkadelic playing.
Yeah,
I mean, that's pretty diverse.
Yeah, I grew up in a generation where, like, I was in between sort of the CD era and the iPod, right? Like, and the iPod sort of, at least from a listener perspective, kind of blew up the idea of genre.
I mean, you could just listen to everything.
Yeah. And so I think, which, I'm grateful to have married an aesthetically brilliant human, because I'm kind of just a mess. I'm like, oh yeah, it could be this or that or the third. But I think specifically at that time in 2008, I was really, really into Bob Dylan. I was really, really into Lou Reed, really, really into Bright Eyes and Neutral Milk Hotel and like all the great songwriters, Paul Simon. I was like really obsessed with singer-songwriters. I thought that was, at least at the time for the internet and like the early days of blogs, like I thought that like singer-songwriter, at least as an aesthetic, was the closest thing to a blog, right? A blog is sort of a journal, right? And the closest thing to a journal is a guy with an acoustic guitar singing straight at you. Yeah. And so I thought that medium kind of fit the time, at least, and fit sort of the whole thing. And so as an artist, that's how I felt like I could connect, kind of cut through, if that makes sense.
The other thing I picked up from that was what Bob Snyder, the guy I mentioned who had written 2,000 songs, he said that the key to writing a good song is to say something unexpected.
Yeah.
Which I really appreciate that, and I picked up on that, and that's what kind of brought me to the Dylan kind of comparison.
I like that.
The other thing that I spent a lot of time on was this project you did with G-Eazy.
G-Eazy, yeah.
G-Eazy.
Yeah.
Downtown Love.
Yeah.
And you co-wrote and co-produced that.
Yeah.
Right?
That's correct. My first platinum record.
Dude, it's killer.
Thank you.
I don't know how long it's been out, but I just got it. And when I started to look at it, there was 18.3 million views. Now I think there's 18.4, and that other 100,000 is from me. So good. And the music video part of it.
Props to Bobby Brutally. Brilliant. Yeah, he directed that. He's a good friend. He's wonderful. Yeah.
It is so good.
Yeah.
It is so good. You put those two together. But it kind of reminded me a little bit of Linkin Park.
Okay.
You know, so you're singing the chorus.
Sure,
right?
yes.
And
you have that rap.
Singing,
singing, yeah.
And, you know, it's just got a good feel to it.
Sure.
And I mean, I think the first time I ever really heard that was kind of like a Linkin Park kind of thing way back when. But
yeah, he's a really interesting. He was one of my classmates in Loyola, and it was a really at the time when we were there, I was sort of like the indie kid, like the indie rock songwriter kid. He was like the rapper kid from the Bay Area, right? And there was this really interesting night where we were at the Della Chase on St. Charles, having wine and fries and having a good old time. And at the time, he was sort of wearing like neon, and it was kind of like that era of things. And I may or may not have had a few too many glasses of wine. And I said, like, we all were kind of like, man, what is going to be, hip hop has never really dealt with things that are classic. Hip hop is very much a now art form. And, because he's a white rapper, like he had to kind of find his thing. And a few weeks later, he slicked his hair back and he's like, I'm going to be the James Dean of rap. And I was like, that's brilliant. Super smart. And what he showed me was all the credit to him, Matt Bauer Schmidt, his manager, Jamil, his manager. They built like essentially a creative agency around him. So those guys on the management front, Christoph Anderson, a producer and who I still work with today. He's coming to my house tomorrow to work on some music. Devin Baldwin, brilliant singer. Me helping with songwriting here and there. I mean, they built an agency, but the product was him, and so that really taught me. And Bobby, brutally, to your point, brilliant videos. Grady Brannon, incredible photographer. Bobby's an incredible photographer as well. And so it became almost a media company. And so that taught me sort of what a modern day artist, would look like, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that is so cool.
Yeah.
So, you're writing, you're producing, you're singing, you're traveling, and this brings us to the connection, right? So you're working at the music venue in New Orleans, and I think the way the story goes, you're performing there. Now, you had been around doing some stuff. You'd done Austin City Limits Jazz Fest.
Yeah, Lollapalooza, Bonnaroo. Yeah.
I mean, you've been getting around. So now you're back home playing, and this is where you two meet, right?
Yeah.
Bounce
where
Pass.
we meet.
KGB.
So, love at first sight, I take it.
It was intrigue at first sight.
Look, I'm really, when I first meet people, I can come off, well, okay. So I played this show at this festival in New Orleans. And when I get off stage, you've seen the videos, I can sometimes I don't perform anymore, but at the time, I can be pretty intense. And I need like a good 10, 15 minutes to kind of decompress.
Decelerate.
And as you can probably tell, Kate is like a bright, bubbly, shiny human being. And so I'm getting off of this stage, and I'm kind of.
It was hot.
It was hot.
There was like a trash can on stage with chains.
Yeah, it was all. It was, you know.
It was a thing. And
it was cathartic.
Yeah. And so he gets off stage, and I just immediately said, "Hey, okay, so you're playing this fundraiser," and I mean, I was.
And I'm scratching the back of my head, like, yeah, sounds good.
This is 12 years ago, a dozen years ago. So
yeah.
I had a lot more energy. And,
This pre-kid.
Yeah, pre-child. Yeah. And so, he was playing a show. He was getting ready to play a fundraiser at Republic. It was for Evacuteer.org, which was a
foundation that helped sort of get people
that helps coordinate evacuation sort of tactics around the city. And
that party was called the Bye Bye Hurricane Season Party.
It was the end of the hurricane season. Yeah. It was at Republic, and so I wanted to go. So I went to go check out JM's band before, because I was, I just wanted to know who was coming to the club and whatever. And so, he was kind of not very enthusiastic about meeting me, and I was like, well, all right. So
the irony was we had. And still have, but at the time, probably we had never met, but we had probably
a dozen friends,
if not more, like 25 mutual friends.
Because I just moved back to New Orleans, and all these people thought like, oh, you should meet this guy John Michael, and you should meet this gal Kate, and whatever. Yeah. So after I met him at Po' Boy Fest and was like, well, he doesn't like me at all. I basically said, well, I'm just going to make the green room the most fabulous green room,
which to her beautification
possibly can. And I went above and beyond and got all the things that you wanted that were on your. Did you have a rider at the time?
I don't know. Probably.
Anyway,
I was in my 20s. I thought I was important. Probably had a rider. Yeah.
The things.
I got all of the things you needed and made it very,
only
very
brown
nice.
M&Ms, all that.
So I was like, he's going to like me no matter what. And then we just kept running into each other.
Yeah.
Right? It was just like, our universes we just kept orbiting each other until we finally went and got Thai food for lunch. And then 2 days later had dinner together. And I think I moved in shortly. It was like we were just together forever after that.
Yeah. And it was just done.
Yeah. It was just kind of.
Then she realized I wasn't a complete monster, which was good. So,
yeah. I went on a couple little quick runs with him to different, shows and stuff like that. Realized that touring was not for me.
Yeah.
Because this is not like Beyonce tour.
This was like struggling in a van. Like
everyone sleeps.
Kate's
in the same
like, wait
hotel.
a second, I don't understand.
I have to share the room.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, and also because I'm the front person and fronting the thing, and we don't want to have like a situation where the band revolts. We're sleeping on the floor and they sleep in the bed.
Exactly.
And Kate's like, wait, I thought the lead singer has it like cush. I'm like, no, the opposite. No. We want to be a good leader. Yeah. We were servant leadership. And so she quickly realized like, oh yeah, like, go on tour, honey.
I'm going to stay home with the dog.
Yeah.
You go ahead.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. All right, let's take another quick break, get a word from our sponsor, and we'll be right back. We would like to thank Gear Train for their support of the Next Entrepreneur podcast. Gear Train is a national program management company that specializes in the inspection and audit of conveyor systems, VRCs, robotics, and material handling equipment. Gear Train also manages routine maintenance and repair programs, as well as emergency callouts for clients all across the United States. Gear Train technicians have the experience to keep your automated equipment systems running at peak output. For all of your inspection, audit, and maintenance needs, reach out to Gear Train. They can be found online at geartrainperforms.com. And we are back with Kate and John Michael. So, Kate, you guys have met, and but you're still doing a gig. You're doing a gig in New Orleans for who's that? Ashley Longshore Studio.
Yeah, that's right. I'd started working with Ashley in about I think it was 2013, so 9 years ago. Yeah,
sounds right.
Yep.
And you were early on, but that company grew.
Yeah, so I started working with Ashley in 2013 in a room about the size of this one, and was the president of operations for the company, created foundation, scaled the company to, an 8-figure a year art business.
So she is an artist. Actually, Longshore is an artist. But it looks pretty diverse. When I look at your website, it looks like that's what artists do. I mean, they just do a lot. I mean, so what all were y'all doing there? I mean, there was her art, but there's other merch and other stuff.
Yeah,
right?
and then there's, global brand collaborations with brands like Maybelline and Clé de Peau and, Bergdorf Goodman and those sorts of things. So it was really sort of being the, creating the blueprint and infrastructure in order for those things to be able to scale.
Yeah, I don't really know what that looks like. I mean, how an artist in New Orleans does a collaboration with Bergdorf Goodman. I mean, what does that look like? How does that work?
It looks like the brand comes to the table and is interested in working with this colorful, enigmatic, profound artist. And then, we sort of create the meat from within and, send it off.
So is it for products? Is it for art in their stores? Is it
both and yeah. It was a lot. It was a multi sort of disciplinary, I guess, approach to, to sort of that entire brand.
So that seems like a pretty high energy gig.
Yeah.
I mean, y'all were moving and shaking. There wasn't a lot of grass growing under your feet over there. It doesn't sound like.
We were taking over, yeah. And then it was sort of time for me to spread my wings and move on to greener pastures.
Yeah. Did you start to look at that and say, hey, I should be doing some of this for myself kind of thing? Or?
Well, I've always been an artist, right? So
sure.
I've always, painted or done created furniture, reupholstered, even just, redesigning rooms and redecorating our rooms in our house or painting. I mean, I can't stop
Right.
sort of the creation. I'm working on a kitchen right now for a friend and, redesigning that. And then I had this huge hospital installation for a recovery unit that I just completed a couple of weeks ago, which was fantastic. So yeah, I enjoy, entrepreneurship is in my blood, right? Yeah. So the child of two entrepreneurs, I have to I'm always and I also have to do things, right, that sort of fill up my tank creatively and emotionally and mentally. And so like I have to use my hands and I have to be creative, whether it's journaling, painting, clay, gardening. I'm constantly in the process of sort of beautifying things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds like fun.
And helping people grow, right? I really enjoy that's like, sort of how, we have been such a John Michael and I have been a wonderful partnership is that we're both each other's like really fertile soil, right? So like if one person is, really trying to sort of like accomplish this one task, the other person is very sort of, as long as we're clear and communicative about it, it's, well, what can I do to create the best world for you possible? What can I do to create space for you to make this like, a world where you can sort of like flourish and grow? And that can be a small, project where you're like, I need 8 hours of like uninterrupted time, or bigger scale, it's I need to get my MBA. And so it's, all right, let me step in and, be the best sort of, person, parent, partner that I can in order to allow the oxygen for that, for someone to graduate first in their class. Like
awesome.
Like a songwriter to graduate first in his class.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, when I think of two artistic types, I think my initial thought is, well, you guys probably think a lot alike. You're probably pretty similar. But sitting here and meeting you guys, I realized that's not the case at all. You're actually very different.
Very.
Which is, I remember when I had my first daughter and I knew that the second one was going to be a girl too. I was like, oh, good, she'll be the same.
Totally.
So,
no, but I mean, to your point, I think that we're able to kind of play the foil for each other. Like we can flip and kind of be, the objective eye for each other's projects. Like, if Kate's doing an her installation in this recovery unit, it's gorgeous. It's incredible. But it's really nice to kind of say like, we can bounce off of each other. Like, well, what is the purpose of this thing? And I'll go into my like weird little strategy brain and kind of say like, okay, all this is about is making people feel comfortable. So like when you go to your color palettes and things of that nature, just think ease and comfort and all those kinds of things. She goes, okay, got it. I know exactly what to do. And so back and forth, like if I'm working on a record, I'm like, would you listen to this? Like the goal of this is like to cross over, not like for, sort of people within genre. Would you listen to this? Like, is this, oh yeah, you know what? It could, so it's nice to have that kind of objectivity against each other.
He and some of his collaborator partners will laugh at me because he works in the studio, the bedroom, a spare bedroom in our house, and then I sort of am we share a wall, and I'll start humming some of the like the melodies of the songs that they're producing, and either he or Christoph will say, "Oh, it's a hit."
We got it. We got one, boys.
She's singing it. She's whistling it.
We got one, boys. So
John Michael, when I asked Kate about like her creative output, and yours, a lot around music, the writing, the producing,
film scoring, brand stuff,
and then the film stuff, right?
Yep.
And then the branding stuff. So you're doing all this stuff from the moment that y'all met.
Yes.
You're continuing down that path, and you've done quite a bit of music production.
So I produce, a lot of my life, I guess starting with the Swaybox stuff, when I moved more into film, like I've become less and less interested in sort of being the artist or the focal point or the face of something, and been much more interested in sort of being the person behind the person, whether that be writing and producing for other people, whether it be doing brand, content and redesign campaigns, all those kind of things. That really is what kind of, it's a really happy place for me. Like performing felt like a necessary thing more than like where my joy was. Being an only child and all those kinds of things, I kind of like, it's twofold. One, it's nice to kind of have that intimate space with people, and also like to be able to sort of dig out and really get to the core of who an artist is, and be able to be sort of frankly selfish and say, this is what I would want to hear from you, and kind of be a coach. I mean, it's kind of that thing in athletics, they talk about, when you're 18, you have all the athleticism and none of the knowledge. And then it's two elevators, and the knowledge goes up and the athleticism goes down. I really feel like I'm kind of at that peak point where I have a bit of both, right? But the thing that I'm more interested in as time goes on is imparting experiences, failures, help, nurturing, growing, and making, imparting onto people what I think the world or other audiences or things of that nature would want to hear from people.
It's interesting. I want to talk about the impact of COVID.
Sure.
On your business. So I've talked with several people on this podcast whose businesses actually Zoomed during COVID.
Sure.
Our last week's guest is one example. Many were just devastated.
Yeah.
And the performing arts were just racked out.
Oh, yeah.
So how did that impact the two of y'all as a couple?
Well, it's strange. Like, 3/4 of my MBA was during COVID.
That's right.
Right? So we had to kind of figure out, and also she left her situation with Ashley right at the top of COVID. So we, in many ways, it was like, well, what are we going to do? It was a blank slate, right? I was still remotely producing some records. I mean, we had the song Every Night of the Year, actually, that you mentioned. Yeah. My friend Gerald G-Eazy did a cover of it during a record that came out during that time. And then, you know, at the time I knew, you know, I had gone out to kind of see, okay, am I going to go work for a consulting firm? Like, because I thought, like, in many ways, in my head, and this might be just foolish, consulting to me is producing companies. And, like, I've always produced records, and, like, a lot of ways it's, oh, change this, change blah, blah, blah. And they looked at me like I was crazy when I told them that. And so I was like, oh, well, okay, so we're going to stay in entertainment, which, you know, for better or for worse, this is a little gnarly, but okay, great. So we're going to stay at home.
Right.
We're going to figure out how to do this. And Kate, in her beautification thing, we turned to each other and we said, okay, this room in our house, there's going to be a lot of creative people that are going to come through here to record, to do branded campaigns, to do whatever it is. We need to make a space where when they walk into this place, COVID, the stresses of the outside world, all these things wash away and they're just completely present. Because really at the end of the day, in any performance-based thing or anything, I think that, like, giving people in an environment in which they can be completely and utterly themselves and completely and utterly comfortable is so massive. And so Kate, in her genius, was like, okay, we're going to paint this room a deep dark blue, and whenever people walk in this place, they're just it's all gonna melt away. And so we've produced,
we had so
you
much
started
fun.
A new project,
a new business,
company,
together. Well, that wasn't the intention at first, but eventually it became a creative agency called the Blue Room.
And it's so funny because you know, people will say that, you know, we were sort of devastated during COVID, and yes, it was obviously a very trying time. But even when we were in it, I thought to myself, like, we're gonna miss this one day. I just had this feeling of like, oh, one day we're gonna be nostalgic about this. And sure enough, I'm thinking back now about sort of some nights that we had there. Granted, everyone was safe. We constantly masked, but God, it was like Grand Central State. I mean, it was literally Gerald would come in with his whole crew.
Yeah.
Big Frida was in there one night. Jake from Scissor Sisters.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just Alvin. You know, I mean, it was just like every single. It was like a factory. It was.
We figured out how to
out.
make a pod for music, you know, and like everyone would test and all these kinds of things, but it was so healing and such an amazing feeling, and you know, it's a testament to Kate's ability to design and curate a space that gets people to their true selves. I think a lot of people in business, in arts, and no matter what it is, they put up a lot of walls, and I think the best things come from when those walls are broken and you get to the truth. And I think it's a testament to her ability. You know, that's with just the studio vertical of this. But yeah, during COVID, it was, I mean, you know, Alvin Ford Jr., who's a close friend of mine, got his first major label placement for a record that we worked on during COVID. We produced Jameson Ross's album during COVID, which is coming out soon. He's just shooting a video for his first single. It's going to be really good. But he's a Grammy-nominated singer and drummer. And, like, so, you know, we would just hunker down and we figured out clever ways to where it's like, wait a second, making records, making content, making product, all these things can be done with very few people. Mm-hmm. It's like just if you have the right people, right? And I think that so much of COVID, though, yes, you know, I didn't get a gig at McKinsey, but at the end of it, I think we kind of reconfigured and realized, like, wow, when the two of us, because both of us were the people behind, we've always been the people behind the people. So what if we basically create a business that is empowering others? And that can manifest itself in a myriad of ways, right?
And so it has, in that the Blue Room, your creative agency, you've mentioned record production. What all different types of projects has the Blue Room?
So French Truck Coffee, we did their entire video, audio.
For their Festin bag campaign. It's a bag. It's one of their. They have 6 private labels throughout the year.
Yeah.
Of
Seasonals,
excuse me, that they offer, and this is their festival season bag. And so we created the content for all of that entire campaign.
That's fast.
That included photography, video, audio, the whole bit.
It's our favorite. I mean, it keeps the Blue Room running.
Literally.
Let's just say so.
Literally.
And they're friends, and it's it's also just the best, objectively the best coffee in the city.
It manifests itself that way. We've obviously the installation in the hospital that Kate did, records that we talked about.
Yeah, we have an ongoing partnership with, Paris Parker salons and ambassadorships with those. And we've worked with Dirty Coast for giveaways in the past. And,
Another big thing that we did, so to the point of empowering creativity, there's this thing in music where basically they're young music producers are more and more what I call like laptop producers, right? And so they're using basically samples and creating collages to create new beats and tracks and things of that nature. And so one of the things that we did is we created these packs of samples and loops and things of that nature that are just these digital assets that, sell for $30, $60, which is, and basically it's a B2B business. So if you're a laptop producer in Iowa, right, and you don't have access to a platinum selling songwriter and producer or musicians in New Orleans or whatever it may be, you pay $30 and here's music. Like sort of, if you think about it, sort of almost like as the farm that sells tomatoes to a restaurant, right? And so to the point of being clever with your business models and things of that nature, I think that, and we're also exploring with a company called Matterport, the 3D environment thing. It's basically like an edutainment sort of thing. So like we've scanned the Blue Room in a 3D environment, and it's becoming a place where we're starting to develop this thing where basically people can come into the Blue Room and get consulting on their creative projects and creative, whatever pursuit it may be. And so creating programs and edutainment, which was what we're calling it, in order to empower in whatever shape or form a person's creative pursuit may be.
Yeah.
That is so cool. All right, as we start to wrap up here.
Yes.
What's next? What's next for Kate and John Michael and the Blue Room, maybe?
I mean, I think a lot of it is that creating more partnerships. I just had an incredible conversation with a friend of mine who was an NBA classmate who was also a Major League Baseball player. And I think, I look at somebody like that and I go like, God, I would love to produce something for him that was like a digital asset that, when I was a kid and I was 10 before I wanted to play music, like I would kill to have a 3-hour masterclass with a Major League Baseball player, and have like an intimate experience with that. And I think that, right now to me, I think education is going to be massively disrupted.
Yeah.
I'm the product of an MBA that was done on Zoom. I know the value of it and where the value gaps are. And I also think that people are going to be more interested in getting to sort of the specifics of people's expertise. I would love to be able, I look at this up here, if there was a way to have, all these people have passed, but if there was a Jack Welch 3-hour masterclass on business, I would pay gobs of money for that, and I think that sort of edutainment space is what I'm really getting interested in.
I've seen where some of these Major League baseball players, I'm sure in all sports, are really taking their digital creation, their content creation to the really next level, and planning for that life after their athletic career. And it's just becomes something huge. And, you look at guys that get out of their athletic career and just build great fortunes. And I think all these younger guys are taking that a lot more serious now and using that path to do that.
Well, and to the point of like what G-Eazy and Maddie and those guys taught me is like these kind of people, you can become a media company. I think everybody's a media company now.
Or not to.
I mean, look at it. We're doing a podcast. This is your podcast, right? Like, I don't think in 1995 you thought you'd be a media personality as well as a businessman, right? And so I think that this is where we're going. And it just so happens that a theater major who grew a pop art, multi-million-dollar pop art business and a platinum-selling record producer are coming into the world when content is king. So what's next? I think that's what's next.
Yeah, so cool. Okay, final question. You kind of touched on Coco being creative with the iPhone.
Yeah.
Do you see her, being creative in other ways?
Absolutely.
I mean, mom and dad picking up guitars and painting.
So she has access to everything. I mean, like I said, the art studio and the music studio are open spaces, and she is privy to all of those things. She loves to read, so there's books everywhere as well. We went through a school recently, and there was a 4th grade class putting on a little show. They were doing the Aristocats rehearsal, and she was glued to this. And so
I've always predicted that I thought she was going to be like Julie Taymor, the woman who directed The Lion King on Broadway.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, theater major mom, songwriter, producer, dad, like stage production boss child. Makes perfect sense to me.
It strikes me that, you can't force music or anything else.
No.
Somebody doesn't want to learn it. But it is the only universal language, right? I really think that all children should somehow be introduced to music and see what they can make.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that one of the agreements that we had very early on is like, okay, we're going to create the environment that neither of us had. Like, I wish I had the amount of coffee table books and Cy Twombly books and Tim Burton sketches and, juxtaposed against a record collection of Fela Kuti and James Brown and Bob Dylan and all these things. Like, it's all there for her. And like, the hope is at some point she's just going to pick something up and it's going to click,
Yeah.
Well, guys, I have enjoyed talking to you
it's
so
been a pleasure,
much.
man. Thank
Really
you for
have enjoyed
having
it.
us.
And so I appreciate y'all coming in, and thank y'all so much.
Thank you. Grateful.
When I started this podcast, I wanted to include all types of entrepreneurs, including social entrepreneurs. But our very first podcast was with an artist, Zvonimir Mihanovic, and Split, Croatia. And I had to question myself, they're artists, entrepreneurs, and I've come to realize that they absolutely are. But I think this episode here really brought it to light, particularly when you look at the timing of the trajectory of John Michael and Kate in their businesses and how things are transitioning in the world as it related to technology and music distribution. So it's really fascinating to see the degree that they had to become entrepreneurial to get their product out there. I love this conversation. I love talking to them. I love seeing how two creative types came together and everything that they're doing together now at the Blue Room. So we appreciate them coming in. We appreciate you guys watching. Catch you next time. We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. They can be found online at b1bank.com. The Next Entrepreneur is produced by Propel Productions. You can find more information at propelyourstory.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the Next Entrepreneur podcast and hit the bell for notifications. You can also follow us on social media. The links are in the description below.